What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, where today we're going to be installing some super rad exhaust products from ISR Performance. If you haven't seen the unboxing video I made on all of this stuff, feel free to go check that out and get a closer look at every piece I'm about to install. With that said, we'll go ahead and grab this gorgeous set of headers and get started. This exhaust system is designed to be a direct bolt-in for the S13 and S14 chassis Nissan 240SX. I will be installing the ISR Performance high ground clearance swap headers. These are made specifically for Nissan 240s running the Chevrolet LS Series V8s. The first step is to remove the old headers if you got them, so go ahead and get the car up on jack stands or a lift and we'll get started taking those out. We'll start by removing the spark plug wires, followed by the spark plugs themselves. With the plugs and wires out of the way, you can start loosening and removing the header bolts. If the OEM dipstick tube is still in place, you'll have to remove that too. It's just pressed into the block with an O-ring, so gently twist and pull until it comes out. Since I'm pulling my headers out through the top, the strut tower brace had to go as well. With all the header bolts removed, it's time to pull that old busted header out of the engine bay. Before you can remove the driver's side header, you'll have to separate the steering shaft from the steering rack. I recommend marking the slip joint with a paint marker so everything goes back together the same way it was. I like to completely remove the top bolt of the steering shaft slip joint and pull the steering shaft completely out of the car. My favorite way to keep track of important hardware is to thread it right back into where it came from. And now it's finally time to go back in with some new hotness. There are certain areas in the automotive world where it's always good practice to use any C's on your bolts. Header bolts are one of those areas. Just a couple dabs of this stuff on each bolt will really do a lot of good to make sure they don't ever seize up in the cylinder head. Next in line for installation is exhaust manifold gaskets. ISR does include these in their header kits, however I prefer to use the OEM multi-layered steel ones. Don't forget to install your dipstick tube. I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like that would be a pretty messy situation. With the headers bolted up, you can slip the steering shaft right back into place. There's a lot of debate on the internet about whether or not you should use anti-seize on spark plugs. I always have, and it's always worked great for me. With the plug wires back in place, that completes the installation of these beautiful stainless headers. The header installation really wasn't bad at all, but everything that comes after it is seriously a breeze. Each piece of the system comes with gaskets and hardware. Grab a 15mm socket and a 17mm wrench to tighten these up. My preferred method here is to slide the bolts through the 2-bolt flanges, hang the gaskets on the bolts, and then install the pipe. This is where I really got to see the quality of this kit shine. The welds look awesome, the flanges are nice and flat, and everything comes together exactly as you want it to. Don't forget to install your oxygen sensors while you're down here. I always like to throw a little anti-seize on those guys as well. We'll use the same process to install the mid-pipe. We'll hang the bolts, hang the gasket, and throw the pipe up there. I definitely could have used a second set of hands for this one. Now that the mid-pipe's in, it's time for the main event of the header back system. Say hello to the ISR Performance Series 2 EP single exit. I've always been a fan of blast pipes, but I'm a sucker for a nice pie cut turn down, and this one is gorgeous. You can see how quickly the exhaust system comes together after the Y-pipe, because it's just singular 2-bolt flanges. I'd recommend having a helping hand for this section as well, but I decided to be stubborn and my foot did the trick. This process will be even easier if you have your factory exhaust hangers in place. We're going to have to come up with a custom solution for my setup. I decided to wipe the whole system off with some acetone on an old t-shirt. This will just remove any kind of fingerprints or oils that may have gotten on the system and prevent them from smoking off when you heat everything up for the first time. With the last piece of the exhaust installed, we can finally admire the system in all of its beautiful stainless glory. Hopefully you guys were able to find this video useful, or at very least somewhat interesting. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment, and I really appreciate you guys watching.